The metal key scraped uselessly against the lock for the third time. My fingers trembled as I tried again, certain I must be doing something wrong after my exhausting flight from Seattle. Through the front window movement caught my eye. Madison, my stepsister, was arranging flowers on my dining table. My father appeared behind her, and Barbara. My stepmother handed him something that gleamed in the afternoon light. New keys. "We changed the locks, Ashley. Madison needs this house more than you do. She's giving us our first grandchild." The words hit me through the glass like physical blows, each syllable shattering the world I thought I knew. My legs nearly gave out as I stood on my own porch, locked out of the house my mother had left me. 2 years had passed since cancer took her, and this Victorian home in Portland was her final gift to me alone. She'd been very specific in her will, making sure my father couldn't touch it after their bitter divorce. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd been letting him and Barbara live in the guest house behind the property for free, thinking I was being the bigger person. "Open this door right now!" I demanded, my voice stronger than I felt, my fist connected with a solid wood sending vibrations up my arm. Barbara appeared at the window, her bottle blonde hair perfectly styled as always. She held up a document, pressing it against the glass with a satisfied smirk. Through the distortion, I could make out my name at the bottom, my signature, except I'd never signed anything. "You transferred the house to Madison last month," she called through the window, her voice muffled but triumphant. "Don't you remember? You said a young mother needs a proper home." My mind raced, trying to process the impossibility of what she was claiming. I'd been in Seattle for the past week, presenting at a tech conference for my company. Before that, I'd been buried in code preparing for the presentation. There was no way I'd signed anything, especially not something giving away my mother's house. "That's impossible," I shouted back. "I never signed anything. That's fraud, Barbara. Open this door before I call the police." My father finally came to the door, but he didn't open it. Through the small side window, I could see his face, and what struck me most was that he wouldn't meet my eyes. This man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd walked me down the aisle at my college graduation when Mom was too sick from chemo, couldn't even look at me while stealing my home. "Ashley, sweetheart." He began using the tone he had always employed when trying to smooth over his mistakes. "You need to understand. Madison is 7 months pregnant. She needs stability. You're young, successful. You can afford to get an apartment somewhere nice." "This is my house," I said, my voice breaking. "Mom left it to me. How could you do this?" "You have a good job," Barbara interjected, appearing beside him. "Madison works retail. She can barely afford her prenatal vitamins. Sometimes family means making sacrifices." The casualness of their theft stunned me. They spoke as if taking my home was as simple as borrowing a cup of sugar. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. While it rang, I watched Madison through the window, running her hands over her pregnant belly as she surveyed my living room like she'd already lived there for years. 911, what's your emergency?" "I've been locked out of my own home," I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "My family changed the locks while I was away, and they're claiming I signed the house over to them. I need police assistance." The dispatcher took my information, and within 15 minutes, 2 officers arrived. Officer Chen, an older man with kind eyes, listened to my story while his younger partner, Officer Williams, spoke with my father through the door. "Mom," Officer Chen said gently, "I understand this is distressing, but if they have paperwork showing you signed the property over, this becomes a civil matter. We can't force them to let you in without a court order." "But I didn't sign anything," I protested. "Check the date on their supposed document. I was in Seattle. I have plane tickets, hotel receipts, conference records." "I believe you," he said, and I could tell he meant it. "But that's something you'll need to prove in court. For now, I suggest you find somewhere to stay and contact a lawyer first thing tomorrow." Officer Williams returned, shaking his head. "They showed me a quit-claim deed with her signature, notarized and everything." "Notarized by who?" I demanded. He glanced at his notes. "A notary named Jennifer Moss." I felt my stomach drop. Jennifer Moss was Barbara's best friend from their book club. The pieces of their plan started falling into place, each realization making me feel sicker than the last. As the officers prepared to leave, Officer Chen handed me his card. "Document everything," he said quietly. "Take pictures, save any communication with them. You'll need it for your case." I stood on the sidewalk, watching the police drive away, while my family watched from inside my house. My house. The anger that had been simmering beneath my shock finally boiled over. I took out my phone and started recording, making sure to capture Madison, unpacking boxes, my father hanging new curtains, and Barbara directing the whole operation like some twisted conductor. "You won't get away with this," I said loudly enough for the recording. "This is Ashley Coleman standing outside my home at 4723 Maple Street on October 15th. My father, Richard Coleman, stepmother, Barbara Coleman, and stepsister, Madison Wells, have illegally changed the locks and are occupying my inherited property using fraudulent documents." Barbara's face appeared at the window, her smug expression faltering when she saw me recording. She quickly pulled the curtains closed, but I'd gotten what I needed. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're family." Family. The word tasted bitter now. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't betray the memory of the dead. Family doesn't leave you standing on the sidewalk, locked out of your own life. I walked to my car, each step feeling like I was moving through quicksand. 28 years old, successful software developer, and suddenly homeless because the people I trusted most had stabbed me in the back. As I sat in the driver's seat, I allowed myself exactly 1 minute to cry. Then I wiped my face, started the engine, and drove to the nearest hotel. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd roll over and accept their theft because we were family. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I was my mother's daughter, and she'd raised me to fight for what was mine. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Hampton hotel room felt sterile and wrong as I sat on the edge of the bed, still in yesterday's clothes. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Madison arranging flowers in my mother's vase. My phone showed 17 missed calls from various relatives, no doubt recruited by my father to guilt me into submission. I ignored them all and focused on finding a lawyer. But first, I had to face Monday morning at Patterson and Associates, where I'd worked as a senior developer for 3 years. The sick feeling in my stomach intensified as I realized my father had access to that building. He worked in accounting 2 floors below my department. I arrived early, hoping to avoid him, but Sandra from HR intercepted me at the elevator. Her usually warm smile was replaced by an expression of professional concern that made my blood run cold. "Ashley, Mr. Harrison needs to see you immediately," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. The walk to our department head's office felt like a funeral march. James Harrison sat behind his mahogany desk, my personnel file open before him. The sight of it made my chest tighten. Those papers contained copies of every document I'd ever signed for the company. "Sit down, Ashley," he said, his tone formal where it was usually friendly. "I received a concerning report from accounting this morning." "Let me guess," I said, my voice harder than intended. "From Richard Coleman." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You're aware of the complaint." "What did he tell you?" I asked, though I could already imagine the lies. "He's expressed concern about your mental state," Harrison said, sliding a paper across the desk. "He claims you've been exhibiting paranoid behavior, making threats against family members, and that you suffered some kind of breakdown over the weekend." I read the complaint, each word twisting the knife deeper. My father had painted a picture of a daughter, spiraling out of control, jealous of her pregnant stepsister, lashing out at family members who were trying to help her. He'd even suggested I might be a danger to myself and others. "This is all lies," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "He's trying to discredit me because he stole my house." Harrison's expression didn't change. "Ashley, I've always known you to be rational and professional. but these are serious allegations. He's suggesting you may have signed documents while in an impaired mental state. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The forged quitclaim deed. My father establishing a paper trail of mental instability. He wasn't just stealing my house. He was building a case that I'd been incompetent when I supposedly signed it over. He used his access to this building to get copies of my signature, I said urgently. Check the security logs. See when he accessed my personnel file. That's a serious accusation, Harrison warned. It's the truth. He forged my signature on a quitclaim deed while I was in Seattle. Now he's trying to make it look like I was mentally unstable so no one will believe me when I challenge it. Harrison studied me for a long moment. I want to believe you, Ashley. You're one of our best developers, but I have to follow protocol. I'm placing you on administrative leave pending an investigation. Unpaid? I asked, already knowing the answer. I'm afraid so. It's standard procedure when mental fitness concerns are raised. My hands clenched in my lap. No home. Now, no income. My father had orchestrated this, perfectly cutting off my resources just when I needed them most to fight back. How long have you known my father? I asked suddenly. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. We've worked in the same building for 5 years. Why? Has he ever mentioned his gambling problem or that his wife Barbara has been bleeding him dry with her debts? Ashley, I don't think... Or did he just present himself as the concerned father worried about his unstable daughter? I stood up, no longer able to contain my anger. I've never missed a day of work, never had a performance issue, never had a single complaint, and suddenly I'm a danger to myself and others. The leave is temporary, Harrison said, also standing. Get a psychological evaluation clearing you and you can return. With this on my record forever, I pointed out. How convenient for him. I gathered my personal items from my desk while security watched, adding humiliation to injury. Co-workers averted their eyes as I passed, already infected by whatever rumors my father had spread. Only Janet, my cubicle neighbor, risked a sympathetic look. I know this is bullshit, she whispered as I packed my laptop. Richard was here at 6 this morning talking to everyone about how worried he is about you. Did he happen to mention he stole my house? Her eyes widened. What? Check his access logs, I said loud enough for security to hear. See how many times he's been in the personnel files. I bet this isn't the first time he's helped himself to employee information. The security guard stepped forward. Ma'am, we need to go. As they escorted me out, I passed the accounting department. Through the glass doors, I saw my father at his desk pretending to work, but I caught him glancing up, and for just a moment, our eyes met. The look on his face wasn't triumph. It was fear. He knew I'd figured out his plan, and he was afraid. Good. He should be. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and made a call to Mark Salazar, a lawyer Janet had used during her divorce. His assistant put me through immediately when I mentioned emergency fraud involving real estate. They're trying to establish a pattern of mental instability, Mark said after I explained everything. Classic gaslighting technique. We need to act fast before they can do more damage. Can you meet me in an hour? Yes, I said, then hesitated. I should mention I've just been placed on unpaid leave, so I'm not sure how... We'll work out payment, he interrupted. This kind of blatant fraud makes my blood boil. Bring any documentation you have. Texts, emails, recordings, anything. After hanging up, I noticed a new email on my phone from my father's work account sent to multiple relatives and family friends. The subject line, concerns about Ashley. I opened it with trembling fingers. He'd written a masterpiece of manipulation, painting himself as the devoted father watching his daughter struggle with delusions and paranoia. He mentioned my fixation on the house, my jealousy of Madison's pregnancy, and my increasingly erratic behavior. He asked everyone to pray for me and to encourage me to seek help. The responses were already pouring in, aunts and uncles offering prayers. cousins sharing their own struggles with mental health, family friends suggesting therapists, each well-meaning response another nail in the coffin of my credibility. But then I noticed something my father had overlooked in his haste to destroy my reputation. He'd sent the email at 6:47 that morning. According to the timestamp on his complaint to HR, he'd filed that at 6:52. And according to Janet, he'd been spreading rumors in the office since 6, which meant he'd been in the building since well before 6, with enough time to access files, write complaints, and launch a coordinated attack on my character, all while I was at a hotel locked out of my own home. I forwarded everything to my new lawyer, then drove to his office with grim determination. My father thought he was smart, using his position to access my information, leveraging family connections to destroy my credibility. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. I wasn't the same little girl who used to believe his promises after he'd disappointed my mother again. I wasn't the teenager who'd made excuses for him when he missed my competitions because Barbara needed him more. I was my mother's daughter, and she'd taught me to document everything. My father had fired the first shot, but I was about to show him what happened when you went to war with someone who had nothing left to lose. Mark Salazar's office occupied the corner of a converted Victorian in downtown Portland, all exposed brick and modern furniture. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing as I spread my evidence across his conference table. "The timestamp discrepancies are good," he said, studying the emails, "but we need concrete proof of forgery. Without that, it's your word against a notarized document." I stared at the fake deed again, my forged signature mocking me. Then a memory surfaced, breaking through the fog of exhaustion and stress. "Oh my God," I breathed. "The cameras!" "What cameras?" Mark leaned forward. "Last year, someone tried to break into my neighbor's house. It spooked me living alone, so I installed a security system, but not the obvious kind that burglars look for." My hand shook with sudden hope. Hidden cameras, tiny ones. In the smoke detectors, the doorbell, even one disguised as an air freshener in the kitchen. "Your family doesn't know." "I never told anyone. The footage uploads to a cloud server automatically." I pulled out my phone fingers, flying across the screen. If Barbara forged my signature in my house. The app loaded slowly, each second agony. Then the dashboard appeared, showing weeks of recorded footage. I scrolled to 3 weeks ago, my heart hammering. "There." Mark pointed at the screen. "Kitchen camera, October 1st, 2:14 p.m. I tapped the file and we watched Barbara and Madison enter my kitchen. They moved with the confidence of people who believed they were alone. Barbara spread papers across my granite countertop while Madison kept watch at the window. "She's too trusting," Madison's voice came through clearly, "just like her pathetic mother." The words hit me like a physical blow. My mother, who'd been nothing but kind to Madison, reduced to a punchline in my own kitchen. Barbara laughed, pulling out several documents. "Stand at the window. Tell me if you see her car." We watched Barbara practice my signature over and over, comparing it to what looked like personnel documents. My personnel documents. The camera caught everything in crystal clarity as she carefully traced my name, perfecting each loop and curve. "This is gold," Mark whispered. "Keep going." The timestamp jumped to 2:47. Barbara now had a clean document in front of her, signing my name with practiced ease. Madison clapped like she was watching a performance. "Perfect," Madison said. "Even Ashley won't be able to tell the difference." "The notary comes tomorrow," Barbara replied carefully, putting the forged document in a folder. "Jennifer owes me from when I covered for her affair. She'll backdate it to last month." "What about when Ashley finds out?" Madison asked. "Your father's handling that. By the time she gets back from Seattle, he'll have laid enough groundwork that no one will believe her. A few complaints at work, some concerned emails to family." Barbara's smile was cold. "Everyone will think she's having a breakdown." But then Madison did something that made my jaw drop. She reached under her shirt and adjusted something, then pulled out what looked like a flesh-colored pad. "This thing itches like crazy," she complained. "How do pregnant women stand it?" "Only a few more weeks," Barbara assured her. "Once we have the house, you can drop the act. We'll say you lost the baby from stress if anyone asks. Blame Ashley's hostile behavior." My hand covered my mouth as the full scope of their deception hit me. The pregnancy, the entire pregnancy was fake. "Holy shit," Mark breathed. "Excuse my language, but holy shit." "There's more," I said, scrolling through files. Different days, different angles. We found footage of Madison ordering a prosthetic belly online, Barbara meeting with Jennifer the notary, and multiple planning sessions where they discussed every detail of their scheme. One clip showed my father nervously pacing while Barbara assured him it would work. "I don't like this," my father said in the recording. "Maybe we should just ask Ashley for help with the debts." "Ask," Barbara's voice dripped contempt. "She has a 3-bedroom house she inherited free and clear while we're drowning in debt. Where's the fairness in that? Besides, it's done. The documents are ready." But what if— "Richard, grow a spine," Barbara snapped. "Your ex-wife is dead. Her brat doesn't deserve what she couldn't even enjoy. Madison needs this more." I had to stop the video, nauseated by the casual cruelty. My mother's death reduced to convenient timing, me dismissed as her brat, and my father weak as always going along with it. Mark was already making copies of everything. "This changes the game completely. We have proof of forgery conspiracy to commit fraud and false personation with that fake pregnancy. They're looking at serious jail time." "What's our next move?" "Emergency injunction to get you back in your house. With this evidence, any judge will grant it immediately. But first," he pulled out a legal pad, "we need to document your damages. Lost wages from the forced leave, hotel costs, emotional distress. Everything." We spent 2 hours building the case, Mark's excitement growing with each piece of evidence. In 20 years of practice, I've never seen such clear-cut fraud caught on camera. They gift-wrapped their own prosecution. As I prepared to leave, something nagged at me. "Mark, in the video, Barbara mentioned debts. What kind of debts would drive them to this?" "The kind that make people desperate," he said grimly. "I'll have my investigator look into it. If they're in financial trouble, it adds motive to their crime." I left his office feeling something I hadn't experienced since finding my key wouldn't work, hope, but also a deep sadness. My father, the man who taught me to tell the truth, had conspired to steal from me. He'd stood by while his wife called my dead mother pathetic. He'd chosen them over me. Back in my hotel room, I scrolled through more footage looking for additional evidence. Instead, I found something that broke my heart. A video from 2 months ago showed my father sitting alone in my kitchen, holding a photo from my parents' wedding. "I'm sorry, Linda," he said to my mother's image. "I'm so sorry for everything, for Barbara, for not being there when you were sick, for what I'm about to do to Ashley." He wiped his eyes. "But I'm in too deep now. I owe too much. Barbara says it's the only way." Even then, 2 months ago, he'd been planning this betrayal. His tears meant nothing. His apology to my mother's photo meant nothing. He'd made his choice. I saved that video too. When this went to court, I wanted the judge to see that he knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a misunderstanding. This was a calculated betrayal by someone who was supposed to protect me. Tomorrow, we'd file for the emergency injunction. Tomorrow, I'd begin taking back what was mine. But tonight, I sat in a hotel room mourning the loss of the father I thought I knew. The security system had captured more than just evidence of fraud. It had captured the death of my family. The investigator Mark hired worked fast. Tom Bradley, a former detective with silver hair and knowing eyes, called me at 7 the next morning with urgent news. "We need to meet," he said. "What I've found explains everything, but you're not going to like it." An hour later, I sat across from him in a diner, watching him spread documents across the table like a dealer laying out cards. Each page revealed another piece of my stepfamily's hidden life. Barbara Coleman, formerly Barbara Mitchell, formerly Barbara Reeves. He began sliding photos across. Your stepmother has a pattern. She targets widowed or divorced men with assets, moves in fast, and bleeds them dry. How many times has she done this? At least 3 that I can verify. The last one was in Nevada 6 years ago. A widower named Frank Torres. She got him to remortgage his house for her business venture. When he lost everything, she disappeared. That's when she became Barbara Mitchell and moved to Oregon. My coffee went cold as I absorbed this information. My father didn't know. Your father was a perfect mark, grieving his ex-wife despite the divorce, guilty about not being there for her illness, and sitting on a decent pension plus access to a guest house. Tom pulled out another document. But here's where it gets worse. Barbara has serious gambling debts. Not just poker night with friends. She owes $47,000 to some very unforgiving people. 47,000! I couldn't process the number. That's just what I could verify. She's been using online gambling sites, illegal betting rings, even borrowed from loan sharks. He showed me printed screenshots. Your father's been desperately trying to cover it, but he's tapped out. He's borrowed against his retirement, maxed out credit cards, even took a loan against his car. And Madison. Tom's expression darkened. Madison Wells has her own problems. Evicted from 3 apartments in 2 years. Credit card fraud charges that were mysteriously dropped. She's been running romance scams online, pretending to be different women getting men to send money for emergencies. He slid a printout toward me. Multiple dating profiles with Madison's photos but different names. Sarah, the nurse who needed help with her mother's cancer treatment. Jessica, the teacher whose car broke down. Emma, the single mom facing eviction. The fake pregnancy is just her latest con, Tom continued. I found 3 crowdfunding pages. She's raised over $12,000 for baby supplies, medical expenses, and nursery preparation, all fraudulent. I stared at the evidence of my stepsister's crimes. How did I not see this? Con artists are good at what they do, Tom said gently. They show you what you want to see. You saw a stepsister who needed help, so you gave it. You saw a father trying to move on, so you welcomed his new wife. What about the notary, Jennifer Moss? Deeper in debt than your father. Barbara's been paying her gambling debts in exchange for favors. This isn't the first document she's falsely notarized. He pulled out another paper. She notarized a will for Barbara's last victim that was supposedly signed by Frank Torres. He was in the hospital in a coma at the time. The scope of the criminal network my father had married into was staggering, but one document made me gasp aloud. A medical record from 2 years ago obtained through Tom's connections. Madison had a complete hysterectomy after severe endometriosis. I read, she can't have children. The crowdfunding victims deserve to know, Tom said, but there's more. I tracked down Barbara's previous stepdaughter, Frank Torres's daughter, Maria. She's willing to testify about Barbara's pattern. She went through this too. Almost identical scheme. Forged documents, claims of mental instabilities, the works. But Maria didn't have security footage. She lost her father's house and never recovered it. My phone rang. Mark's name appeared on the screen. Ashley, I filed for the emergency injunction, he said when I answered. But there's a problem. Your father's lawyer just submitted a psychiatric evaluation claiming you've been showing signs of paranoid delusion for months. From what doctor? I asked, though I was already guessing. Dr. Patricia Huang. Except here's the interesting part. Dr. Huang died 3 months ago. I looked at Tom, who was already taking notes. Let me guess. The evaluation is notarized by Jennifer Moss. How did you know? Mark sounded surprised. Because this is what they do, I said, feeling oddly calm. They paper over their lies with more lies, hoping the stack gets too high for anyone to climb. After I hung up, Tom leaned back in his chair. Your father's in deep with dangerous people. Barbara's loan sharks don't care whose house they take as payment. He probably sees stealing from you as saving his own life. That's supposed to make me sympathetic. No, it's supposed to make you careful. Desperate people do desperate things. We spent another hour going through evidence. Tom had found surveillance footage from the medical supply store where Madison bought her prosthetic belly. He'd tracked down 3 of her romance scam victims willing to testify. He'd even found Barbara's real identity, Linda Krause, wanted for fraud in 2 other states. "This is enough to bury them," he said finally, "but they're going to fight dirty. That fake psychiatric evaluation is just the beginning." As I left the diner, my phone buzzed with texts from family members. My Aunt Carol: "Honey, your father says you're not well. Please get help." My cousin David: "Whatever's going on, we love you. Mental health isn't shameful." They all believed I was crazy. My father's campaign was working exactly as Barbara had planned, but they'd made one mistake. They'd assumed I'd crumble under the shame of being labeled unstable. They'd assumed I'd retreat, give up, let them have my mother's house to save face. They'd assumed wrong. I sat in my car and composed a group text to all the concerned relatives. "Thank you for your concern. I'm perfectly well. However, I've discovered Barbara is actually Linda Krause, wanted for fraud in multiple states. Madison is running fake pregnancy scams for money, and Dad has been helping them forge documents. I have video evidence of everything. If you'd like to see the proof before the police, do let me know." Then I turned off my phone. Let them chew on that while I prepared for war. The security system had given me the weapon I needed. Tom's investigation had provided the ammunition. Now it was time to show my family what happened when you tried to con the wrong woman. They wanted my house because they were desperate, drowning in debt and crime. But in trying to steal my home, they'd signed their own eviction notice from freedom. The medical supply store sat in a strip mall on the outskirts of Portland, wedged between a nail salon and a tax preparation office. I parked across the street, watching Madison's red Honda Civic in the lot. Tom's surveillance had confirmed she came here every Tuesday around 10 to maintain her pregnancy props. Through my windshield, I watched her emerge from the store carrying a discreet black bag. She moved differently when she thought no one was watching her supposed pregnancy waddle, replaced by quick, confident strides. The way she tossed the bag in her back seat spoke of routine, not reverence for supplies meant for an expected child. I followed at a distance as she drove to her next stop, a coffee shop where she maintained one of her crowdfunding campaigns. Through the window, I watched her set up at a corner table with her laptop, adjusting her prosthetic belly for maximum visibility. Within minutes, sympathetic customers were stopping to chat, some pressing cash into her hands. My phone recorded everything from across the street. Madison's performance was Oscar-worthy. She rubbed her fake belly, winced at imaginary kicks, even produced tears when describing how her baby's father had abandoned her. One elderly woman hugged her and handed over what looked like a $100 bill. Unable to watch more, I drove to meet Tom at his office. He'd assembled a comprehensive file on Madison's scams that made my stomach turn. 14 different crowdfunding campaigns over 2 years, he said, spreading screenshots across his desk. Different platforms, different sob stories, same fake pregnancies. She's pulled this con in 3 states. How much has she stolen? Conservative estimate over 60,000, and that's just what we can track online. The in-person sympathy donations could double that. He showed me social media posts where Madison had stolen ultrasound images from mommy blogs, posts about fictional genetic conditions requiring expensive treatments, even a fabricated story about needing a special surgery for her baby that insurance wouldn't cover. "This one's particularly cruel," Tom pointed to a campaign. "She claimed the baby had a heart defect, raised $18,000 from people who thought they were saving an unborn child." What about the men from the dating sites? 3 are willing to testify. James Morrison sent her $4,000 for prenatal care. Robert Chen gave her $6,000 for a security deposit on a baby-safe apartment. Marcus Williams... Tom paused. Marcus tried to kill himself after he found out she'd scammed him. He'd emptied his savings, thinking he was going to be a father. The weight of Madison's cruelty settled over me like a shroud. This wasn't just about stealing money. She was destroying lives, playing with people's deepest emotions. I have a friend at the prenatal clinic, I said suddenly. She might be able to help us get Madison's real medical records legally. Worth a shot. The hysterectomy record I found earlier is good, but medical documentation from her actual doctor would be ironclad. I called Sarah, my friend, who worked as an administrator at Portland Women's Health. After explaining the situation, she promised to see what she could do within legal boundaries. 2 hours later, Sarah called back with shocking news. Ashley Madison has been here. Not as a patient. She comes in and photographs our waiting room, takes pictures of herself with our pamphlets, even staged photos in front of our ultrasound room sign. For her scam post, has to be. Security footage shows her here 12 times in the past 4 months. Never checked in, never saw a doctor. Just took photos and left. Can you send me that footage? I'll need to go through legal channels, but given that it's evidence of fraud using our facility's image, I think we can make it happen. While waiting for the clinic's response, I decided to take a more direct approach. I created a fake profile on one of Madison's dating sites and reached out to her. Within an hour, Jessica had responded to Mike's interest. Her messages were perfectly crafted manipulation. She was 7 months pregnant, scared, and alone after her ex left her for another woman. She didn't want to burden anyone with her problems, but if Mike was serious about dating a single mom, she could use a friend. By the third message, she'd mentioned needing help with medical expenses. I screenshot everything, my anger building with each lie. When Jessica sent a stolen ultrasound photo claiming it was baby Emma, I had to step away from the computer. My phone rang. Mark's excitement was palpable. The judge reviewed our emergency injunction request. With the security footage, she's granting it immediately. We can get you back in your house tomorrow morning. Police will supervise the eviction. What about the fake psychiatric evaluation? Tom sent over evidence that Dr. Huang is deceased. I've filed fraud charges against whoever signed her name. The judge is not amused by their attempt to use a dead psychiatrist. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by anxiety. They won't go quietly. No, they won't, which is why we'll have police presence. But Ashley, there's something else. The judge was so appalled by the security footage that she's fast-tracking criminal charges. Your family is about to face arrest warrants. After we hung up, I sat in my hotel room staring at the evidence we'd accumulated. Madison's fake pregnancy wasn't just part of the house theft. It was her entire life, a rolling con game that left destruction in its wake. I opened my laptop and began composing a detailed report of Madison's pregnancy scams. Every false campaign, every stolen photo, every manipulated victim. When I finished, it ran 20 pages with screenshots, dates, and victim testimonies. Then I did something that would have horrified my mother, who always believed in handling family matters privately. I posted it all online. Every scam, every lie, every stolen ultrasound photo. I tagged the crowdfunding platforms, the dating sites, and local news stations. Within hours, it went viral. Victims started coming forward with their own stories. A woman who'd given Madison her last $1,000 for gestational diabetes supplies. A couple who'd offered to adopt Madison's baby and given her money for living expenses. A support group for pregnant women who'd embraced Madison only to discover she'd stolen their personal ultrasound images. My phone exploded with notifications. Reporters wanted interviews. Police departments from other jurisdictions wanted information. And victims wanted justice. But the most satisfying notification came from the Portland Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. They were opening a comprehensive investigation into Madison Wells for wire fraud, identity theft, and organized fraud schemes. As I prepared for bed, knowing tomorrow I'd finally reclaim my house, I thought about the ultrasound photos Madison had stolen. Each one represented a real mother, a real baby, a real family's joy twisted into her weapon of manipulation. Madison had pretended to carry life while dealing in destruction. Tomorrow, her fake pregnancy would give birth to something she never expected consequences. My phone rang at 6 in the morning, displaying a number I hadn't seen in years. Uncle Marcus, my mother's older brother, who'd been estranged from our family since a bitter fight about my grandmother's estate. His voice was rough with emotion. "Ashley, I saw your posts about Madison's scams. We need to talk. There are things about your mother and father you don't know." An hour later, I sat in his downtown law office, surrounded by legal books and family photos I'd never seen. Marcus looked older than I remembered, his hair now completely gray, but his eyes held the same sharpness that made him Portland's most feared divorce attorney. "Your mother came to me 2 years before she died." He began pushing a thick folder across his mahogany desk. "She knew about Barbara before you did." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were photographs that shattered my understanding of my family's timeline. My father with Barbara at a hotel restaurant dated 5 years before my mother's death. Another showing them kissing in a parking garage. Bank statements highlighting suspicious transfers. Mom knew he was cheating. She hired a private investigator when money started disappearing from their joint accounts. Richard was funding Barbara's gambling even then. Marcus's jaw tightened. Linda wanted to divorce him, but then she got sick. She decided to focus on protecting you instead. He pulled out another document, this one bearing my mother's handwriting. Her will, but a longer version than I'd seen before. My eyes caught on a section circled in red. "The House Protection Clause," Marcus explained. She specifically stated that Richard Coleman and any future spouse or partner could never have claim to the property, no matter what documents might surface. She even named Barbara Mitchell specifically, though she used her previous identity. "Barbara Reeves," I breathed. Mom knew her real name. "Your mother was thorough. When she found out about the affair, she dug deep. Found Barbara's previous victims, her pattern of targeting widowed men." He handed me another photo. "This is Maria Torres, the stepdaughter from Nevada. Linda flew out to meet her, got the whole story." I stared at the photo of my mother sitting with a woman who looked hollow-eyed and defeated. Mom had known everything and never told me. "Why didn't she say anything?" "She was protecting you. She knew if she exposed Richard, then he'd fight for assets, drag out a divorce, make your life hell while she was dying. So she played the long game." Marcus pulled out a sealed envelope. "She left this for you to be opened only if Richard ever tried to claim the house." My mother's familiar handwriting covered the envelope. "For Ashley, when you need the truth." Inside her letter made me cry for the first time since this nightmare began. "My dearest Ashley, if you're reading this, your father has done what I feared he would. By now you know about Barbara, about the affairs, about the theft. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this pain. I've left evidence with Marcus. Use it. Your father chose his path when he emptied our retirement account for that woman while I was in chemotherapy. He made his choice when he brought her to our anniversary dinner pretending she was a work colleague. The house is yours alone, I made sure of that. There's a recorded conversation with my lawyer where I specifically state my mental clarity and my intention to exclude Richard from any inheritance. Marcus has the recording. Fight for what's yours. Don't let sentiment stop you. Your father stopped being the man we both loved the day he chose a con artist over his family. All my love, Mom." I had to set the letter down, overwhelmed by the revelation that my mother had orchestrated protection from beyond the grave. "There's more," Marcus said gently. "The investigation your mother funded." It revealed Barbara was connected to a wider network. She's not just a lone con artist. She's part of an organized group that targets vulnerable families. How organized? They have lawyers who help forge documents, notaries on payroll, even corrupt medical professionals who provide fake evaluations. Your mother documented all of it. He pulled out a flash drive. 500 pages of evidence. She called it her insurance policy. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Marcus's face darkened. Your father threatened me. Said if I interfered, he'd claim Linda was mentally incompetent when she wrote her will. I didn't have the security footage you found. Without that, it would have been his word against a dead woman's. But the psychiatric evaluation they submitted is from a dead doctor. They're using the same playbook. Exactly. Barbara's network has used Dr. Huang's name on dozens of fraudulent evaluations. She was part of their group before she died. He pulled up a database on his computer. I've been tracking their victims, 17 families in 4 states, all following the same pattern. The scope of what my mother had uncovered was staggering. This wasn't just about my house. It was about a criminal organization that had destroyed dozens of families. Your mother's evidence, names, Marcus continued. Lawyers, notaries, doctors, even a judge in Nevada. She wanted to go to the FBI, but she ran out of time. We can finish what she started. That's why I called. With your security footage providing current evidence and your mother's historical documentation, we can bring down the entire network. He leaned forward. But Ashley, these people are dangerous. When cornered, they've resorted to violence before. What kind of violence? Maria Torres's house burned down after she tried to fight back. Ruled accidental, but she doesn't believe it. Another victim in Arizona was run off the road. These aren't just con artists. They're career criminals. The weight of this revelation changed everything. My father hadn't just fallen for a con artist. He'd allied himself with organized crime. I need copies of everything, I said. Already prepared. Marcus handed me a briefcase. Your mother would be proud. You're fighting back exactly as she hoped you would. As I prepared to leave, one question nagged at me. Uncle Marcus, why did you and Mom really fight about grandmother's estate? He smiled sadly. We didn't. That was the cover story. I discovered Richard was trying to manipulate your grandmother into changing her will, bringing Barbara around when your mom wasn't there. I confronted him, and he threatened to destroy my practice if I told anyone. Your mother and I staged the fight to protect both of us. Another lie unraveled. Another deception exposed. My entire family history needed rewriting. Tomorrow, when you get your house back, Marcus said, be careful. Barbara knows the walls are closing in. A cornered con artist is unpredictable, but one connected to organized crime, that's truly dangerous. I left his office carrying my mother's evidence, her letter pressed against my heart. She'd known this day would come and had prepared for it like a general planning for war. Even death hadn't stopped her from protecting me. My father had chosen Barbara over cancer treatment bills. He'd chosen her over his marriage, his daughter, his integrity. Now he'd discover that my mother had chosen too. She'd chosen justice, and tomorrow it would finally be served. The coffee shop on Division Street was nearly empty at 3 p.m, which is exactly why Barbara had chosen it. I sat in a corner booth, my phone recording in my pocket, watching her enter with the confidence of someone who believed they held all the cards. She looked different from the woman who'd smirked at me through my own window. Her usually perfect appearance showed cracks hastily applied. Makeup couldn't hide the stress lines, and her designer clothes seemed to hang loose as if she'd lost weight rapidly. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the opposite seat. Her voice attempted warmth, but achieved only calculated sweetness. You have 5 minutes, I replied. Barbara's facade cracked slightly. That's no way to talk to family. You're not my family. You're a criminal named Linda Krause who's wanted in multiple states for fraud. Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. I see you've been doing research. Good. Then you know I'm someone who gets what she wants. What you want is my house. What I want is to avoid unpleasantness. She reached into her purse, pulling out a manila folder. Your mother wasn't the saint you think she was, Ashley. I kept my expression neutral while she spread documents across the table. My heart sank as I recognized what appeared to be psychiatric evaluation forms with my mother's name. Severe depression, anxiety, paranoid delusions. Barbara read with theatrical concern. Poor Linda was quite ill those last years. These evaluations from Dr. Patricia Huang paint a troubling picture. Dr. Huang, who died 3 months ago. Barbara's smile widened. Dr. Huang, who treated your mother 2 years ago. See the dates, all during her cancer treatment. A jury might wonder if someone in such a fragile mental state could write a valid will. I studied the documents, noting the same forgery tells I'd seen in my supposed quitclaim deed. But these were more sophisticated with medical terminology and convincing details about my mother's supposed mental decline. You're threatening to challenge my mother's will. I'm offering you a choice. Barbara leaned back, radiating false confidence. Drop this ridiculous fight, let Madison have the house she needs for her baby, and these documents disappear. Fight me, and I'll not only challenge the will, I'll go after everything Linda left you. The investments, the life insurance, all of it. Based on forged documents from a dead psychiatrist. Prove they're forged. Her mask slipped, completely revealing the cold calculation beneath. I have 3 witnesses ready to testify they saw your mother during her episodes. Family friends concerned about her mental state. So sad how cancer can affect the mind. I let her words hang in the air while I pretended to consider. These witnesses, would they include Jennifer Moss, the notary with gambling debts, or maybe some of your other associates from the fraud network you're part of? Barbara's eye twitched. I don't know what you're talking about. The Torres family in Nevada might disagree. So would the Hendersons in Arizona. Oh, and the Washingtons in Utah. Should I continue listing the families you've destroyed? You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I pulled out my own folder. See, while you were forging psychiatric evaluations, I was talking to the FBI. They're very interested in your multi-state fraud operation, especially the part where you burned down Maria Torres's house. Barbara went completely white. That was an electrical fire, with accelerant traces the insurance company found, but the local police ignored. After Maria tried to fight your property theft, I leaned forward. The FBI is reopening that case, Linda. The sound of her real name made her flinch. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Neither do you. You thought I was just some naive tech worker you could steamroll, but I'm Linda Coleman's daughter. She spent her last years documenting everything about you, your past identities, your victims, your network. I smiled coldly. She even recorded conversations with your previous victims. Would you like to hear Maria Torres describe how you threatened her children? Barbara's hands trembled as she gathered her fake documents. If you pursue this, you'll regret it. We have resources you can't imagine. Judges, police officials in positions you need. Had. Past tense. I stood up. Your network is crumbling. Jennifer Moss was arrested this morning for notary fraud. She's already talking. How long before she mentions the house fire? The threatening calls, the bribes to local officials. You're lying. I showed her my phone screen with the news alert. Portland notary arrested in widespread fraud investigation. Barbara's carefully constructed composure shattered completely. Listen, you little bitch, that house is mine. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much. Your pathetic mother is dead. Your weak father chose me. You have nothing. I have you on recording admitting to multiple felonies, I said calmly, pulling out my phone. Thank you for the confession. She lunged across the table, trying to grab my phone. Coffee cups crashed to the floor as I stepped back, keeping the device out of reach. The barista called out in alarm. Is everything okay over there? No, I said loudly. This woman is trying to assault me. Please call the police. Barbara straightened her face, contorted with rage. You've made a terrible mistake. When I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd taken my offer. I'll destroy everything your mother loved. I'll make sure you lose your job, your reputation, everything. Like you did to the 17 other families, Uncle Marcus and I have documented the FBI will love adding witness intimidation to your charges. She stormed out, leaving her fake documents scattered on the table. I carefully collected them evidence of her attempted blackmail to add to our growing case file. The barista, a young woman with concerned eyes, approached cautiously. "Are you okay? That looked intense." "I'm fine, just dealing with a family dispute over inheritance." "Oh, families are the worst sometimes," she said sympathetically. "My aunt tried to steal my grandmother's jewelry after she died. People show their true colors when money's involved." If only she knew how true that was. I paid for the spilled coffee and left, calling Mark immediately. "She threatened you?" His voice was sharp with concern. "We need to file for a restraining order immediately." "Already documented everything. But Mark, she mentioned resources in the system, judges, police. We need to be careful." "I'll reach out to the FBI directly. With interstate fraud and potential corruption, this is their jurisdiction now." As I drove back to my hotel, I noticed a car following me. Black sedan, tinted windows maintaining perfect distance through several turns. My hands tightened on the wheel as I took a deliberate detour, confirming the tale. Barbara had made good on her threat already. These were her resources, the muscle behind the con artist facade. I drove directly to the police station, pulling into the visitor lot. The sedan continued past without slowing, but the message was clear. They were watching. They were threatening. They thought fear would make me fold. They were wrong. I walked into the station to file a report, my mother's letter in my purse giving me strength. She'd known this day would come, had prepared for Barbara's threats and manipulations. Tomorrow, with police protection, I'd reclaim my house. Barbara's blackmail attempt had failed her threats, recorded her crimes, documented. The woman who destroyed 17 families was about to learn what happened when you threatened the 18th. My mother had been too sick to fight Barbara directly, but she'd raised a daughter who could and would. The war Barbara had started was about to end, just not the way she'd planned. Judge Patricia Winters lived in a stately colonial in Portland's West Hills, her rose garden as meticulously maintained as her 40-year legal career. When she opened the door, her silver hair caught the morning light, and her sharp blue eyes assessed me with practiced authority. "Ashley Coleman," she said warmly, "you look just like Linda did at your age. Come in, we have much to discuss." Her study felt like a sanctuary of justice, with law books lining floor-to-ceiling shelves and framed photos documenting decades of legal service. She poured tea from an antique service, her movements deliberate and calming. "Your Uncle Marcus called me," she began, "but I'd already decided to come forward after seeing your social media posts about Madison's fraud. Your mother would be proud of your courage. You knew about Barbara." Patricia's expression hardened. "I helped your mother document everything. Linda came to me 3 years ago, terrified and desperate. She discovered Richard was having an affair, but more importantly, she'd uncovered who Barbara really was." She retrieved a leather-bound journal from her desk. "These are my contemporaneous notes from meetings with your mother. Every detail, every discovery, all dated and witnessed." I opened the journal, seeing Patricia's neat handwriting documenting my mother's investigation. Dates when my father had withdrawn money, records of Barbara's previous identities, even transcripts of conversations my mother had secretly recorded. "Linda was building a case," Patricia explained, "not just for divorce, but for criminal prosecution. Then she got sick and priorities shifted." "To protecting me?" "Exactly. We spent hours crafting that will to be challenge-proof. I was there when she signed it. 2 other judges witnessed it. We video recorded the entire process." She pulled out a tablet, showing me footage of my mother, thin from chemo but clear-eyed, explaining her intentions. "I want to be absolutely cleared," my mother said in the recording. "I am of sound mind despite my cancer diagnosis. I've been evaluated by Dr. Sarah Chen, Chief of Psychiatry at Oregon Health Sciences University. My house goes to Ashley alone. Richard Coleman and any partner he may have are explicitly excluded from any claim. This destroys Barbara's forged psychiatric evaluations." I breathed. "There's more." Patricia pulled out another file. Your mother suspected Barbara might try forgery, so she did something clever. She registered her signature with the state's fraud prevention database. Any document with her signature can be verified against the official sample. I didn't even know that existed. Most people don't. It's primarily used for high-value estate planning. Your mother was thorough. Patricia's eyes gleamed with admiration. She also hired a forensic accountant to track Barbara's financial crimes. Would you like to see what they found? The forensic report was devastating. Barbara had stolen over $300,000 through various schemes across 4 states. She'd left a trail of destroyed families, bankrupted retirees, and at least 1 suicide. Your father features prominently in the recent activities, Patricia noted. He's helped Barbara steal from his own company's clients using his position to identify vulnerable targets. He's that deep in... I'm afraid so. The accountant traced $60,000 in embezzled funds just in the last year. Your father isn't just Barbara's victim. He's become her accomplice. The betrayal hit fresh. My father hadn't just chosen Barbara over me. He'd chosen crime over integrity. Will you testify? I asked. I've already contacted the prosecutor, but Ashley, there's something else. Something your mother made me promise to tell you only if this situation arose. Patricia's voice gentled. The affair started before your parents' divorce. Barbara targeted Richard while Linda was caring for your sick grandmother. She knew he was vulnerable, overwhelmed by his mother-in-law's illness and his wife's absence. Classic predator behavior. Yes, but your mother forgave him initially, tried counseling, tried rebuilding. It wasn't until she discovered Barbara's criminal history that she realized Richard wasn't having an affair. He was being groomed by a professional con artist. That doesn't excuse what he's done. No, it doesn't. At some point, victimhood becomes complicity. Your father crossed that line long ago. Patricia stood moving to a wall safe. Your mother left something else in my keeping. She handed me a safety deposit box key and a sealed envelope. Inside, my mother's handwriting, for the FBI, evidence of interstate fraud network. Barbara Reeves, Mitchell, Kraus. Handle with care. She knew this was bigger than just our family. She spent her last good months investigating, used her remaining strength to protect not just you, but future victims. Patricia's voice grew thick with emotion. She said if she couldn't beat cancer, she could at least beat the cancer that was Barbara. My phone buzzed with a message from Mark Emergency. Barbara's lawyer just filed an injunction claiming Patricia Winters is senile and her testimony inadmissible. They're moving fast. I showed Patricia, who laughed. Senile, I just won my 137th case last month. Let them try to prove mental incompetence against someone with my record. You're still practicing. Part-time, mostly pro bono work now, which reminds me. She pulled out a business card. Consider me your mother's final gift. I'll be representing you alongside Mark free of charge. Barbara wants to challenge Will. She's about to face someone who's never lost an estate case. We spent 2 more hours reviewing evidence. Patricia had documents I'd never imagined, emails between Barbara and her criminal associates' bank records showing patterns of theft, even photographs of Barbara meeting with known crime figures. Your mother turned her pain into purpose, Patricia said as I prepared to leave. She couldn't save her marriage or her health, but she could save you, and through you save others. How do I ever thank you for this? When? Patricia's eyes blazed with determination. Crush them so thoroughly that Barbara's network never targets another family. Your mother started this fight. You finish it. As I left her house, I noticed another black sedan parked across the street. This time, I took photos of the license plate. Patricia noticed too. They're getting desperate, she observed. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. Oh, should we be worried? I've faced down mob lawyers, corrupt judges, and violent criminals for 40 years. Barbara's hired thugs don't scare me. She smiled fiercely. Besides, I have security cameras that make yours look prehistoric. If they try anything, we'll have evidence. Driving away, I felt the weight of my mother's legacy differently. She hadn't just left me a house, she'd left me an army Uncle Marcus with his legal expertise, Patricia with her judicial authority, Tom with his investigative skills, all positioned to strike when Barbara finally overplayed her hand. My phone rang. Marcus, excited, "Ashley, Patricia just sent me the signature verification information. We ran Barbara's notarized documents through the state database, every single one flagged as fraudulent. The prosecutor is issuing arrest warrants as we speak." The tide was turning. Barbara thought she was playing chess, moving pieces strategically. She didn't realize my mother had already won the game before it even started. Tomorrow's eviction would be more than reclaiming my house. It would be the first domino falling in Barbara's criminal empire. And Patricia Winters, my mother's avenging angel in judicial robes, would make sure they all fell. The emergency injunction hearing was set for 9 a.m. in Judge Catherine Morgan's courtroom. I arrived early with Mark and Patricia, our evidence organized in banker's boxes that filled 2 carts. Across the aisle, Barbara sat with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Victor Castellanos, known for defending white-collar criminals. My father hunched beside them, avoiding eye contact. Madison had abandoned her fake pregnancy belly for court, wearing a conservative dress that couldn't hide her nervous fidgeting. They looked like what they were, criminals realizing their scheme was collapsing. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Morgan entered, her reputation for no-nonsense justice preceding her. She'd reviewed our initial filings, and her expression suggested she wasn't pleased with what she'd seen. Mark began our case, projecting the security footage onto a large screen. The courtroom watched in silence as Barbara practiced forging my signature, as Madison adjusted her fake pregnancy belly as they planned their theft in my own kitchen. "Your Honor," Mark said, "this is clear evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and theft. Ms. Coleman deserves immediate possession of her rightfully inherited property." Victor Castellanos stood smoothly. "Your Honor, my clients dispute the authenticity of this footage. In this age of deepfakes and AI manipulation, video evidence must be scrutinized carefully." I felt my stomach drop. They were actually claiming our evidence was fabricated. Mark was ready. "We anticipated this claim, Your Honor. We have digital forensics expert Dr. James Wu present to testify about the footage's authenticity." Dr. Wu took the stand, credentials impeccable. He explained frame-by-frame authentication, metadata, verification, and blockchain timestamping that proved our footage was genuine. For 30 minutes, he demolished any possibility of manipulation. But Castellanos wasn't finished. "Your Honor, even if this footage is real, we must consider context. My client, Ms. Barbara Coleman, will testify that this was merely a joke, a family prank taken out of context." "A prank?" Judge Morgan's eyebrow rose dangerously. "Forging legal documents is a prank." Additionally, Castellanos continued, "We have a witness who can testify to Ms. Ashley Coleman's unstable behavior and threats against my clients." The courtroom doors opened. A woman who looked remarkably like Barbara entered, dressed identically to emphasize the resemblance. She took the stand, identifying herself as Brenda Mitchell, Barbara's sister. "Ms. Coleman threatened to burn the house down with my sister inside," Brenda testified with practiced emotion. "She said she'd rather see it destroyed than let a pregnant woman have shelter." "When did this alleged threat occur?" Patricia asked on cross-examination. "October 10th, around 3 p.m. Patricia smiled like a cat with cream. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit Defense Exhibit 47, records from the Colorado Women's Correctional Facility showing Brenda Mitchell was incarcerated from October 1st through October 20th for check fraud." The courtroom erupted. Brenda's face went white as she realized her lie was exposed. Judge Morgan's gavel cracked sharply. "Ms. Mitchell, are you testifying that you witnessed something while imprisoned in another state?" Brenda stammered, looking desperately at Barbara. I must have confused the dates." Perjury is a serious offense, Judge Morgan warned. Would you like to reconsider your entire testimony? The sister fled the stand, practically running from the courtroom. Castellanos tried to recover, but the damage was done. His key witness had just committed perjury in front of everyone. Your Honor, Patricia stood. I'd like to call Patricia Winters to testify. I noticed Castellanos whisper urgently to Barbara as Patricia took the stand. They'd prepared something else. Patricia testified brilliantly, presenting my mother's video, will declaration, the signature verification evidence, and her first-hand knowledge of Barbara's criminal history. She was unshakable even when Castellanos tried to question her mental fitness. Judge Winters, he said with false concern, at your advanced age, memory can be unreliable. Are you certain about these events from years ago? Patricia fixed him with a stare that had cowed Supreme Court justices. Mr. Castellanos, last month I successfully argued a complex securities fraud case that resulted in a $100 million judgment. Would you like to test my memory by having me recite the entire ruling from recall? The gallery chuckled. Even Judge Morgan seemed to suppress a smile. But Castellanos had one more card. Your Honor, we'd like to submit evidence that Ashley Coleman's mother was mentally incompetent when she wrote her will. We have psychiatric evaluations from Dr. Patricia Huang. The same Dr. Huang who died 3 months ago, Judge Morgan asked coldly. These evaluations predate her death, Castellanos insisted. Mark stood quickly. Your Honor, we have evidence that these documents are forgeries. Dr. Bao Huang's medical license had been suspended 2 years before these evaluations were allegedly written. She couldn't have legally evaluated anyone. Furthermore, Patricia added, we have video testimony from Dr. Sarah Chen, Chief of Psychiatry at OHSU, who actually evaluated Linda Coleman. She found her completely competent despite her cancer diagnosis. Judge Morgan had heard enough. Mr. Castellanos, your client has presented forged documents, produced a perjurious witness, and made baseless claims about evidence tampering. Is there anything legitimate you'd like to present? Castellanos' confidence finally cracked. Your Honor, we request a continuance to prepare additional evidence. Denied. I've seen more than enough. Judge Morgan's voice turned stern. Ms. Barbara Coleman, or should I say Ms. Linda Krause, please stand. Barbara rose slowly, her face pale. I'm granting the emergency injunction immediately. Ashley Coleman is to be given full possession of her property within 24 hours. Furthermore, I'm referring this entire matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. She turned to my father. Mr. Richard Coleman, I strongly suggest you obtain separate counsel. Your involvement in this scheme appears substantial. But Your Honor, Barbara burst out, Madison is pregnant. You can't throw a pregnant woman onto the street. Madison finally broke. Standing abruptly, she shouted, I'm not pregnant. I never was. She made me do it. She pointed at Barbara. She promised me money, threatened to expose my other stuff if I didn't help. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Madison sobbed hysterically, confessing to the pregnancy scams, the crowdfunding fraud, even crimes we hadn't discovered yet. Barbara tried to silence her, but Madison was beyond control. Phew, she burns houses, Madison screamed. She told me about Maria Torres, said she'd do the same to anyone who crossed her. Judge Morgan's gavel cracked repeatedly. Bailiff, take Ms. Wells into custody. She just confessed to multiple felonies. As officers handcuffed Madison, Barbara turned to my father with naked fury. This is your fault. Your weak daughter, just like your pathetic ex-wife. My father finally looked at me, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of remorse, I realized. Tears of self-pity. Even now, he saw himself as the victim. Court is adjourned, Judge Morgan announced. Ms. Coleman, you'll have your house back tomorrow. Officers will supervise the eviction, and Ms. Krause, I suggest you prepare for a long incarceration. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Patricia handled them expertly while I stood in shock. We'd won more completely than I dared hope. Madison's breakdown had given prosecutors everything they needed. Mark shook my hand. That was the most dramatic hearing I've seen in 20 years. Your mother would be proud. It's not over, I said, watching Barbara being led to a police car. She still has resources, still has connections. Let her try anything, Patricia said firmly. We'll be ready. As we walked to our cars, I felt my mother's presence strongly. She'd orchestrated this victory from beyond the grave positioning allies, gathering evidence, preparing for every contingency. Tomorrow, I'd walk through my front door with a key that worked. But more importantly, I'd walk through it with the knowledge that justice had prevailed. The house my mother left me would finally be home again. The criminals who'd tried to steal it would be trading it for jail cells, and their worst nightmare, as promised, had come true. They'd lost it all. The federal courthouse interview room felt suffocating despite its size. Madison sat across from me, her lawyer, and 2 FBI agents looking nothing like the confident scammer who'd performed her pregnancy act for sympathetic strangers. Orange jail clothing replaced designer maternity wear, and without makeup, she appeared younger, more vulnerable, and utterly broken. Ms. Wells has agreed to full cooperation in exchange for consideration in sentencing, her court-appointed attorney explained. She'll detail everything about Barbara's operation. FBI Special Agent Rivera clicked on a recorder. Madison, tell us how this started. Madison's hands shook as she began. I met Barbara 2 years ago. I was already running small cons, fake fundraisers, romance scams. She found me through one of my dating profiles where I was catfishing some guy. She recruited you. She said I was wasting my talent on small scores. Said she could teach me to think bigger. Madison laughed bitterly. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Barbara seemed so sophisticated, so successful. I didn't realize I was just another mark to her. Explain, Agent Rivera prompted. Barbara never partners with anyone. She uses people, then discards them. She had dirt on me from day one, documented all my scams, said if I ever crossed her, she'd turn me in. Madison's voice cracked. I became her puppet. The pregnancy thing was her idea, said it was perfect because people never question a pregnant woman's needs. Tell us about the house theft, I interjected, needing to hear it from her. Madison wouldn't meet my eyes. Barbara spent months planning it. She studied you, Ashley, knew your work schedule, your travel patterns when you visited your mom's grave. She said you were too trusting, just like... She trailed off. Just like my pathetic mother, I finished coldly. I heard you say that on the security footage. I'm sorry. Barbara fed me those lines. She said cruel words would make it seem more real, less rehearsed if anyone was listening. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I didn't even know your mom. Barbara told me she was weak, that she let Richard walk all over her. Agent Rivera pulled out a thick folder. We've identified 43 victims of your pregnancy scams across 6 states. Can you confirm these? Madison reviewed the list, occasionally adding details that made my stomach turn. An elderly man who'd given his last $5,000, believing he was helping his pregnant girlfriend. A support group of cancer survivors who'd raised money for her chemo during pregnancy. Each confession revealed new depths of cruelty. The worst was Marcus Williams, she whispered. He tried to kill himself after finding out I'd lied about carrying his baby. Barbara laughed when